Photoshop is many, many, many things, and I'm going to focus on sort of three of those things. One, it's a tool for creating composites. Two, it's a tool for just helping to visualize imagery that you have. And then three, it allows you actually to do some interesting stuff with your composites. And one of the examples that we're driving towards, and this actually came from a conversation I had with a gentleman, is he still here? During the break. Yep, there he is up and back, guy in the blue shirt. So because he was willing to wave his hand and ask me a question, he gets a t-shirt already. He's asking about creating slideshows, and I said I promised I would show how to make a slideshow. So here's an example of, it's a self-running slideshow that is basically just a series of images. These are DICOM images pulled off a CAT scanner. So we'll see how to do that as well. So I'm going to first start, though, with something called Bridge, because Photoshop, unlike most other tools, well, not unlike, I guess, more so than other tools, engenders the need to have, or the ability or the likelihood to have several different or hundreds of different files. How many people here have digital cameras? How many of you breathe oxygen? Okay, yep, same thing. Because I mean, your phone has a digital camera on it anymore. And so it's really easy to end up with lots and lots of images. So I'm somewhat of an amateur photographer. Let me record this meeting, record this session, sorry. Click OK. Start my audio. Wah, 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 wah. OK, yep, good. And give it just a minute to share my screen. There we go. OK, so because of that fact, I end up with hundreds and hundreds of images. The reason I'm saying all of that is because along with Photoshop, you get, in fact, along with all of the Adobe Creative Suite tools, you get a thing called Bridge. And what Bridge will help you to do is to manage all of these photos that you have and to be able to organize them in some basic ways. So for example, if I want to do a search for files that have something to do with Boston, because I've used these keywords over here to tag these files, you can see that this is tagged with the keyword Boston. If I want to create a new keyword, for example, maybe I want to create a keyword for Cleveland. I spell that right? Yep. There, I just created a keyword for Cleveland and I applied it to that file. And the reason that that's valuable is because over here in my filter menu, or my filter panel, I can isolate only those files that have something to do with Cleveland. As you're working with projects, you'll have a file that might be a part of 6, 7, 8 different projects. And if you have hundreds of files and you have tens of folders, it can be really difficult to manage them. So what Bridge can help you to do is, because it can look down inside folders, it allows you very quickly, or gives you very quick access to the files that you want. So play with Bridge. There's a lot more that it can do, but if nothing else, it can help you with this. So what I did, for example, was I created a favorite by, if I want to create a favorite to, say, this folder, I just drag it over here. This works very much like the Mac operating system does, but it's another quick way to kind of drill down into the files that I might want to work with for a given demonstration or presentation. And so to get started with Photoshop itself, we're going to start doing some composite work. And I've got an image here that I might want to composite with another image. And as you probably know, or might be able to suspect, that the first part of compositing is removing one thing from another. And that's one of the more difficult things that Photoshop does, unless you start working with the version that you have, because it used to be that you'd have to go like this with a lasso, and you can see why I think it's hard to do. Not exactly the best version of that selection. In fact, if I zoom in on this picture, she did not have the good manners to go get her hair done before this image. It's going to take me a month of Sundays to isolate that. Well, not really, because we have two tools that you should learn about right up front. One is called the Quick Selection tool. Here's how it works. I choose it. I use the open bracket to make it smaller or the close bracket to make it bigger, and that being the brush. And then I'm just going to paint, and I'm not worrying about getting close to the edges. Most people do this, and it drives me crazy. They try and go right up to the edge with that tool. You don't need to. Just get close to the edge. Photoshop does the rest for you. Now, there's a little area here that I don't want to have selected, so I'm going to use the open bracket to make a smaller brush, hold down the Option key, and see how it turns into a little minus sign? I'm just going to click. That's what the Quick Selection tool does. It looks for edges, and it does a really good job of finding those edges. Now, you can augment it with the rest of the tools. If you want to learn about the selection tools, lynda.com has several movies on making selections, and they're worth checking out. But the final thing that I need to do is click on Refine Edge, and I do this every time I make a selection. Because what Refine Edge does is, when I select it, is it basically, you see how chunky? Let me zoom in so you can see. You see how chunky that is? That doesn't look real at all. Unless I drag this slider over, what that's going to do is create a little feather of transparency and try and capture the look and feel of flyaway hair. And then if I'm worried because there's a little green in there, I'm just going to decontaminate the colors and crank that all the way up. Those two things alone, once I've done that, I've created a composite, or I've created the beginnings of a composite. Now I can put anything behind her that I want, because those checkerboards, if you're not familiar with Photoshop, mean nothing, transparency. So this is a panel called Layers. And by the way, in any Adobe application, if you're looking for a panel that you can't find, just choose Window, look for the name of the panel. You will almost always work with Layers open in Photoshop, because it's just Photoshop. I mean, you just need it. If you like this particular configuration of tools and panels and layouts, under this little set of chevrons here, I'm going to create a new workspace called My Babu Workspace. And then no matter what I do to mess up my workspace, no matter what craziness I've got going on, to make it hard for me to see what I'm supposed to be doing, all I need to do is, in this case, just reset or choose a different workspace, and Photoshop will put Photoshop back the way you had it when you left it. So that's a tip that will work in any Adobe application. It's a huge time saver, because otherwise you'll just spend time looking for the Layers panel when instead you could just choose, go to my workspace, because I know it was open there. Okay, so in the Layers panel, here's what the Layers panel allows me to do. I'm going to click on this new icon down here and make a new layer. And it is the case that I feel like this woman should have a mustache and a little dastardly beard and big old eyebrows and neck hair and bags under her eyes. Now, because this woman is unlikely to enjoy this, I can just turn it on and off. And that's the thing that Layers allow you to do. The other thing that Layers allow you to do is, make a new layer, is I'm going to give her bags, but instead of giving her bags, I made her look like a football player. So what I'm going to do is take this layer and I'm going to back off its opacity, and then I'm going to take this tool over here called the blur tool. I'm going to blur that up a little bit. Maybe we'll back off on the opacity a little bit more. And there, I've just given her nice bags under her eyes, something I'm sure she enjoys. So again, I can turn them off. So layering in Photoshop, once you've isolated your object using a combination of the Quick Select tool and the Refine Edge button, now you've unlocked the ability to take advantage of the fact that you can layer things together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to composite her with a different image. So let me open up that different image. And All right, well, I'll choose this one, but forgive me for having to cheat and throw that away. So this image here is almost perfect, except that I don't want this creeping vine in the way. I just wanted a nice rock wall. And I don't really have the option of expanding this because this Photoshop file is only big enough for me to use it as is. If I expand it, it's going to get all blurry looking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lasso tool, and I'm going to isolate the bushes, and I'm going to choose Edit, Fill, Content Aware Fill, and click OK. And it takes a few moments, and the reason it takes a few moments is because what it does is nothing short of absolutely magic. Now, if you know what you're doing, you might be able to see the edge that I used, but if you didn't know that that plant was there, you probably wouldn't know that that plant was there. Now, this works best on images like this, where there's nice random stuff. If you had, a set of bricks, there are actually techniques that you could use to fix that as well. And again, I'll refer you to lynda.com, and also Google a guy named Russell Brown. He'll show you how to do some really amazing things. Okay, I've got my images here together. I'm going to go over here to this image. I'm going to take this tool here called the Move tool. I'm going to grab this and drag this straight up and let go, and there, I've just done my composite. Now, this probably isn't going to get her an alibi if she was actually somewhere else committing a crime at this time. But for the purpose of visualization, this is not a bad way to pull together stuff that you want to show and put it in a context that you need it to be in order for you to make the point that you're trying to make. Now, we're going to take a couple of other steps with this, though, because Photoshop allows you to do that, and there's some cool stuff here. For example, I want this to look a little more realistic, and actually, let me pull the Layers panel back out here. I'm going to hit Command-0 to actually Command-plus to zoom in. She looks a little flat right now. It's kind of a giveaway that she's not really against this rock wall, and I want to provide a little bit of visual interest there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this layer, and down here at the bottom of the layer, I have an F and an X, which stands for Effects. And the effect I'm looking for is a drop shadow. I'm going to spin the drop shadow around. And if you look up in the preview area right here, it'll give you a sense of what it's going to look like. I need to expand the distance. I need to change the size. And there. That looks a little bit more realistic. Maybe not perfect, but pretty darn good. But if I realize I don't like it, I can turn it off and on. Anytime I see these little eyeballs here, I can turn things off and on that these eyeballs represent. And the reason that's important is because it gives you the ability to feel free to play around with Photoshop. It's going to be hard for you as long as you use this kind of a technique. It's going to be hard for you to truly destroy an image that you have. Now, at some point, you might be tempted to do like flatten image. Well, okay, I've destroyed it now because now I can't get back. Fortunately, I can always choose File, Undo Flatten Image as long as I haven't done too much since I did that, okay? But the ability that Photoshop has to kind of allow you to play around with these things is amazing. We're going to do one more thing to this. We're going to make this the background. These rocks have kind of a yellowish tinge to them. I'm just going to make it black and white. I want it to kind of look like granite. And the quickest and easiest way to do that is to do another layer effect called Hue and Saturation. Because if you know anything about color theory, saturation is how vivid something is. Well, we're going to take all of the vivid right out of it and make it unvivid at all. So I'm going to choose Hue and Saturation. I'm going to drag the saturation back. And by dragging the saturation back, I've made it unsaturated. Except that, unfortunately, I've also put her in a 1950s Fellini film. So, to make that not be the case anymore, did you bring me some pie? I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a t-shirt anyway, just to show you how much I like people who sit in front. The thing about layers is that they are truly a stack of things, and they work from the top down. Right now, this layer that I added called Hue and Saturation is making everything black and white until I grab it and drag it straight down and put it between her and the rock wall, and now I've made my layer. So I said I was going to put her in a 1950s Fellini film. I don't even know when did Fellini make films? I don't know. I'm not a film history major. But we're going to move ahead to the to say the 60s. Now my anecdotes are just blowing up. I'm going to put sepia in this. Why? Just because I want to. I'm not going to explain it. So I'm going to turn this layer off. And what I want to do is I want to turn this rock wall into more of a sepia tone rock wall. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come over here to the little moon pie. I'm going to choose Hue and Saturation. This time, though, I'm going to choose Colorize. I'm going to choose a hue. I'm going to turn the lightness down a little bit, tweak the hue a little bit, desaturate it a little bit, and there. So now what I've got in this same file, I've got both a sepia version and a black and white version, and I can choose to use either at will. And when I choose File and I say Save, I'm going to do a Save As and throw it over to the desktop. This is a Photoshop file. But let me show you something about the way Photoshop works with the other tools that you have. So if you were here previously, and you weren't, but just trust me, it's cool anyway. I showed you how to use InDesign to place a file. Well, what I didn't say was that one of the file types I can place is a Photoshop file. So I'm going to go ahead and place this. Where did that go? There it is. But because I just placed a raw Photoshop file, let's say that I want to see what this looks like in the context of this document with the sepia tone version, not the black and white version. Well, all I need to do is right-click on this and choose Object Layer Options. This is an object which has layers that I can turn on and off right from within my publication, and it won't affect any other publication or any other page in this publication onto which I've dropped this file. So by layering up and creating layers in my Photoshop file as I've done, I'm giving myself a lot of flexibility with respect to this design. Now, it's also a good idea if I double-click on, double-click on the name and name these layers appropriate so that I don't have something as hard to figure out as Hue and Saturation, or Hue and Saturation 1, Hue and Saturation 2. I'm going to say BW and Sepia, background, and instead of background copy, I'll call this woman. And save it. And now when I go back to InDesign, choose Object Layer Options. Try that again. Place. Right-click on this. Now my layers are named something that makes it a lot easier for me to work with. And by the way, I can do this kind of thing in Dreamweaver as well. So I can do this with the web and with print at the same time. So I've talked about single sourcing a couple of times. This image might be something that I'm using all over campus, in a print brochure, in an EPUB, and in a website. Because I'm pointing back to one single Photoshop file, all of my assets can stay up to date at the same time. That's pretty cool. All right, so let's go back to Photoshop, though, because I want to do a couple of other things. Heard what sounded like a fire alarm. Run! I'm actually going to go back to Bridge, because Bridge can do some things with Photoshop or in conjunction with Photoshop that, in my opinion, are pretty amazing. So I've got the set of files from a this was taken outside of a golf course, and I just thought it was a beautiful fall day last year, and I thought it might be nice to take pictures. But what I did was the sort of standard click, 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 because I wanted a nice panorama to put on my wall. Instead of having to figure out how to knit those together in Photoshop, using Bridge and Photoshop together, I'm going to select the images here in Bridge, and this when I say select the images here in Bridge, realize these are just images sitting in a folder on my hard drive somewhere. The reason I knew how to get to them so quickly was because I've created a favorite for myself in Bridge that got me right there. So that's what Bridge is helping me with. It's also going to help me with this. I'm going to choose Tools, Photoshop, Photo Merge. And what Photoshop and Bridge are going to do together is it's going to take all of these files and it's going to combine them together, and it's going to stack them side by side. It's actually going to provide a little bit of geometry to distort things so that I end up with that. Now, I'm not done yet. Let me open up my Layers panel. And so I'll show you that, and I love this because look how like weirdly shaped it had to make things, but it did it. I don't know how it did it, but it did it. But I'm going to open up the Layers panel. I'm just going to drop a layer in behind everything, and I'm going to fill that layer with a red color. So I'm going to say Edit, Fill, with a foreground color. And you see the problem? I want a panorama that I don't want to have to crop it. I mean, I could take my crop tool and crop it down, but that's not what I want to do. So what I'm going to do instead is something that, to me, is mind-blowing. I'm going to take, underneath the quick selection tool is a thing called the Magic Wand tool. First I'm going to throw this layer away because I really don't need it. I was just using it for demonstration purposes. I'm going to click. And what it did was it grabbed all of those transparent pixels. That's what the Magic Wand tool does. It grabs all the pixels that are essentially the same color. So these are the same color of no color at all. Now and because these layers are spread out across layers, I chose Sample All Layers. So it got everything. Now I'm going to choose Edit. I'm going to use one of my favorite things, Fill, Edit, Fill. I'm going to choose Content Aware, click OK. Try that one more time. Edit, Fill. I don't know what its complaint was there before. And I'm going to stand back. I want you all to clap like that was the most amazing thing you've seen, because it really should have been. Edit. Let me try one more time. I've used this 100 times on this image, on this exact image. And it's there. In fact, if you look carefully at the thumbnail, you can see that it's there, but for some reason, oh, I know why. I forgot a step. I'm so bad. All right, I do need another layer for this, so make a new layer. The reason I need another layer is just because I need to put that stuff that I'm going to fill with, I need to put it in something. So I made a new layer. Now we'll try it one more time. I'm going to move on because I'm doing something wrong. Trust me, when you do this and you're not doing it wrong, it fills that. Let me see if I've got the finished version of this that I can show you. That's basically what you get. And it fills with extra sky and actually fills with extra lawn down here to fill that in. But we're running short on time, and I don't want to make you struggle to watch me figure out what stupid thing I've done wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and continue. Oh, nope. What I need to do is, okay, I skipped a step. We're all wowed at this, right? We're going to get really wowed at what happens next. What I forgot to do is merge all these layers together. So I'm just going to go ahead and merge all these layers together. Now, I'm going to click on this. Now, I'm going to choose Edit, Fill, Content Aware. Give it a few moments. And let the wonders... Maybe my blood sugar's low. Actually, it's not. I just ate like 700 pieces of pizza. They were good pizza. Anyway, so the concept of adding, you can start to combine these techniques together is where I was going with this, to start building images that really take you beyond what you had. Now, there's a whole set of things that you can do with respect to filtering. For example, if I wanted to create a more artistic version of this, maybe I'll choose pixelate and color halftone, see what we get, and there, I can make a halftone image. So there are some interesting things that you can do, but now I want to step into the realm of what you can do that, that goes beyond just making interesting artwork. For example, I'm going to open up this file here. This is a file that came off a microscope. It's not just a panorama that I want to make that's beautiful. I want a high-resolution version of the cell structure of this image. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select these 4 images. I'm going to choose Photo Merge, and I'm going to choose Auto. Whoop, whoa, 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 cancel, 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 sorry. Do that again. Photo Merge. And, boy, am I having one of those days. Let me move over to my video demonstration. I'll come back to this because I don't know whether it's just I'm having a brain cramp or what the problem is. But the next thing the final thing that I wanted to show you how to do with Photoshop is to convert a set of slides and turn it into more than just a set of slides. So what we've got here is a set of slides that I want to have become a video. So more than just creating static images, Photoshop can help you to create some basic video. I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to choose, and this is in Bridge, Tools, Photoshop. I want to load files into Photoshop layers. And what that's going to do is, that's going to convert, and I've got this already open so we can take a look at it. That's going to convert the Photoshop separate images into a single Photoshop file with multiple layers. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because I want to use Photoshop's animation tool to create new layers or create new frames from each layer. So what Photoshop has just done is it's taken this layer-based document and it's laid each of the images side by side, and I can, by shift selecting all of them in the animation panel, choose how long a delay, so I'll choose a half-second delay, and it changed them all. Now, if there's one that I want to stop on, set the delay to 2 seconds, I can have that happen. Once I have this built in Photoshop, then I can choose File, and I'm going to export this. I'm going to render a video. And from here, I can render this out to just about any video file type that I want. Now, I'm just going to use QuickTime. Bless you. But you can see that I could make AVI. I could do an image sequence, which is kind of dumb because I started with an image sequence, but I could. And we'll name this Slideshow. And choose Render. What Photoshop is doing right now is it's converting each of those slides into a frame and then saving it out as a QuickTime video. Now, while it's saving that one out, I'll jump over to the one that I built ahead of time. We'll double-click on it, and we'll come full circle with a slideshow built right directly out of Photoshop from your static images. So those are some things that Photoshop allows you to do as a tool. There's tons more. There is so much more that Photoshop, I'll get to in just a second. There's so much more that Photoshop can do for you. That's one of the many reasons that I'm going to suggest. Kirsten, raise your hand. Kirsten and Kristen. That you talk to those folks about using lynda.com to learn more about the little bits and pieces that Photoshop can do, because it does so much more than I've shown you here. I think you'd be surprised. Question?
Is there a way to do transition between each of those slides and video?
really know, if you want to do full-blown transitions, then my recommendation is to switch over to Premiere, because you can take this file or this set of files, in fact, right even from within inside Bridge, you can pull those into a Premiere project, drop on the timeline, and then do a transition. I don't even think that you can do a crossfade between. No, and the only reason I'm checking is because it's been a while since I've worked with the animation, because I do tend to do things inside Premiere. But if I need a basic slideshow and I don't care about transitions, this is the way to go for sure.